When Meghan Markle marries Prince Harry tomorrow, she will change the royal family. In November last year, Afua Hirsch wrote about this for The Guardian from the position of being a black British woman. I quote, "I struggled growing up with the feeling that the monarchy were fundamental to Britishness, that the Britishness they represented was one that excluded me. This exclusion mattered. It made other people perceive being truly British and being black as incompatible identities." Well, there was more when in November 2016 Prince Harry issued a media statement attacking the racism Meghan Markle was experiencing. It was perhaps Britain's least diverse institution standing for diversity. So whatever you think of royal weddings, this marriage is different for the message it sends about what being British looks like. It's also different because it's been so painfully ordinary in some respects. The embarrassing family members blowing it, the best laid plans going pear-shaped. And that, as the BBC's wonderful Jonny Dymond told me, is what makes this wedding not just royal, but unique.
I think it is all of those things. It did go pear-shaped. There's simply no doubt about it. And it was astonishing because royal life is pretty well controlled, both by tradition and precedent and by the fact that they're not really held accountable in the same way that, like, governments are. And they walk away from stories by saying, that's private, it's nothing to do with you. And to some degree, we all go, oh, okay, yeah, that is private, because we do treat them as a private family as well as this enormous celebrity-driven institution. So it went pear-shaped. It went off the rails because the palace communications people completely lost control of the narrative because they were entirely unused to there being separate sources of information in the form of Meghan Markle's dad apparently having a hotline to this American entertainment website, TMZ, and they weren't used to relatives speaking out as well, because normally relatives don't do that, of the nice English girls that have been married over the last 20 or so years. The relatives understand the deal. So pear-shaped, off the rails, but also it's something that happens in lots of weddings, in fact. If you think about it, everything is well organized, and you've done the kind of who's going to sit with everybody else, and you've worked out what the colors are going to be, and then suddenly the relatives arrive.
Yeah, that's right.
And it goes wrong, and it's just gone wrong. But, and we have to wait and see, there is a chance that this could turn into the most astonishing tale, because we still don't know who's going to accompany Meghan Markle down the aisle. We presume she will have someone and won't make that walk alone through St. George's Chapel. But the sort of good money is heading towards her mother, Doria Ragland. And if it is Doria, it will be a breathtaking moment. St. George's Chapel, I've been inside. It is this repository of 600 years of royal English and British history. It is incredibly ornate. You walk down through what's called the choir, which is where the choir sits, and you walk over the vault that contains the bones of Henry VIII and Charles I, and above you are the standards, the flags of the 24 Knights of the Garter. And then you get to the altar. And if it is Doria, you know, an African-American woman, a social worker, a descendant of slaves, who makes that walk, in some small way, Britain will always be different, and in a bigger way, the royal family will always be different. So it's exciting times.
Yeah, well, that's a good narrative. I like it, because viewed in those terms, you know, this isn't Fergie and Andrew and Edward and Sophie and Charles and Diana and Will and Kate. You know, in Brexit Britain, this is an expansion rather than a contraction. It's not the old firm endlessly repeating itself.
No, it's not. I mean, even if we hadn't had this astonishing week we've just had with Thomas Markle and then the strange relatives who don't appear to have talked to Meghan Markle for years and years, but speak confidently on her behalf and on behalf of other relatives. Even if we hadn't had that week, this was always a big, big deal, because Meghan Markle is so different to the people who have been married by the royal family over the years. It's not that she's a foreigner. It's not that she's divorced. It is that she is part African-American and has talked about her identity. It is about the fact that she's had a job which most of the previous brides didn't, a real job that she actually had to struggle quite hard for. It is about the fact that she has a voice, and she's incredible at communicating, much better than anybody else in the royal family. And so all these things, suddenly it's like, wow, how did that happen?
And actually, I think that reflects well on Harry, doesn't it? I mean, at some level, what a great woman he picked.
To be fair to Prince Harry, and, a fair number of people have a go at him because he clearly isn't an intellectual. I don't mean that rudely. It's not me a way of saying he's stupid, because he's not. But, he's not that interested in books. He was never that interested at school. He went off and served in the army and was pretty diligent about it. He has always dated strong, independent women. His mother, Diana, turned into a very strong, independent woman, an icon of strong, independent women. And it's not entirely surprising that he would end up with a very strong and very independent woman on the individual level. But it's very, very surprising on the royal family level, because that's simply not really what you've done.
Jonny Dymond from the BBC.